Hello, Renzo. Thanks a lot for taking the time today, especially as we know how busy you are in the past few months and years. So the goal of today is to speak about Think Project, about the construction software space. How is it shaping up right now, and how do you see the future? It's as I mentioned, it's a big pleasure to speak with you. We know Think Project is probably one of the hottest assets in the space right now, and more than happy to get a deep dive on the company there. Maybe for like I think a lot of people know you already, but for the people who don't, if it's possible to start just with a quick intro on your side, tell us a bit more your background, and then we can deeper into the content.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for taking the time, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. So thank you for that. So yeah, no, so I've been in the kind of the enterprise software industry for over almost 2 decades. Actually, the reason why I'm here is because of the fact that I'm so passionate around kind of the construction tech industry, and particularly the incredible opportunity to build and to digitize this industry. So my background, as I said, over almost 2 decades in software, being at Salesforce, and after that, basically in the pre-agentic era, which was called RPA at UiPath, which has been very fundamentally kind of important kind of way we are seeing the company as a Thinkproject, and how we are transforming the company into an agentic era company, serving our customers with the most advanced technology solutions, and helping them to build and realize their assets and construction and maintenance over the periods of the lifetime.
Amazing, thanks a lot. Now, if we dig deeper a bit more on Think Project, can you tell us a bit more? What does the company concretely do? Who use them? Who are the key customers for it? And where does it operate there?
Yeah, so we serve our customers along what we call the asset lifecycle management, right? So all the way from plan, build to what we call handover to manage and operate. So we serve our customers through this whole life cycle, and particularly the customers what we serve next to kind of what we call the general contractors are the asset owners. So we are with our customers not for years but for decades. We're here with our customers not just serve them in kind of a point solutions, which is very kind of prudent in our industry, but we need to help them to put the asset at the center and to help them across that life cycle management throughout the asset life cycle. And that's where we've been heading. And then the thing which we're very excited around is particularly the agentic era. And what you will see this week, actually, we're launching what we call Thinkproject IQ and Thinkproject AI on the platform, completely enabled. Not just a PowerPoint, not just a point of a test, right? Not just a roadmap, but actually deeply embedded AI capabilities across the platform into all of our solution sets towards our customers, and then delivering agentic and agents to solve large complex problems for our customers.
Amazing. We'll spend a lot of time on this, and we'll double down on the AI piece for sure, because that's the big elephant in the room, and everyone wants to know a bit more about that. But I would say, can you walk us through a bit more? How did Think Project evolve over the past few years, and how do you see it evolving? Like, how did you reach this stage? What is it, and how do you see it evolving, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so we were born, in Europe. Some of our assets which have come to the company, everything from contract management, and the way to look at it, we're de facto the standard in contract management, together what we call, CDE, which was born in Germany, but also with asset management, which was born in New Zealand. We've put all of these things together as a company, I think, product. So we've come from an application business, right, to an integration business, SaaS, to a platform and agentic, and where we are now, and we're heading towards to. So we're being born in Europe, and we've been able to kind of serve our customers in Europe, the Middle East, and into our Asia and ANZ business over the last years and decades.
Perfect. And how do you see it evolving in the next few years? What do you see in the future?
So as I alluded to, like there's a lot of things which are changing, and And one of the things when I was at UiPath, where it was the pre-agentic era, right? So it was what we call RPA, robotic process automation. We saw what the power could do. And this is, I'm very, very happy that we've been able to kind of recruit and put into the business, a new CTOs who actually comes from Google, who's done the transformation in EMEA from search to applications, and has been able to help us kind of really kind of pave the way on how we're moving to the agentic era. And this is something which hasn't just started, a couple of months ago. This is what I call, light from a distant star. It started many moons ago, right? So we started building this platform around 3 years ago because I saw what the power of RPA and automation and AI would be able to do. I think we're all surprised around the speed on what that's going, but we are very happy that we started this journey a long time ago, which was around deep integration and being able to make sure that we are not an application business, right? Not what we call a house of brands, but a branded house where applications are coming into a modern platform where we're able to kind of, deliver AI capabilities. And I'll give you a couple of examples on that is throughout the platform and giving that power to our customers. So, do I think there's a lot going to change? Absolutely. I think there's going to be a huge amount of change, and we can see it around us, right? And I think this is where you see single application businesses, or you see software enterprise companies who have multiple applications but have not done the integration are really struggling to deliver this agentic opportunity or kind of these agentic capabilities to our customers. And therefore, we saw this transition starting to happen roughly about 2-3 years ago. We started to build it, and as a consequence, we're launching, not on a roadmap, not a proof of concept, not a belief, not a promise, but an actual functioning enterprise platform, which is deeply embedded with AI capabilities and is serving our customers with agents. And that thing is live. As I said, we're launching it, and we're super excited that we're able to leapfrog, right, of where the industry is going. And that's what we've been doing at Thinkproject, taking the power of what we've always been very good at, which is CDE, the de facto standard, around BIM, around contract management, around asset management, but in embedding that all together and being able to serve the customers with best-in-class solutions in the agentic era.
Amazing. Can you give us a few use cases just for people to understand how does
Sure.
it work in the AI there? And on top of that, how's the customer appetite feel like? Are they open? Do they want to deploy AI in their projects? Are they looking for it? Because everyone knows construction industry is a bit behind in technology and adoption, but happy to get your view there.
Yeah, so I think there's, to start with, we don't only serve construction industry, right? Roughly about 80% of our customers are asset owners. And the asset owners have seen, and it's really important that they have accurate data around their assets, right? Because we work in an environment where compliancy, risk, right? Zero risk. It has to be compliant. It has a huge risk element around it, right? Because some of these assets are the largest assets in the world, right? It could be anything from nuclear power stations to the largest tunnels which are being built, to road, rail, construction, right? Very, very critical infrastructure. So the first one is really around kind of, we are serving construction part of it, but that's not the main thing we're serving, right? We're serving our customers where the asset sits in the center, and we're able to kind of move around kind of that asset lifecycle. Second one, as I said, it's around compliance and risk, right? So there's a huge amount of CapEx involved with it. And so our customer base, asset owners, but also general contractors, need to make sure that they manage this risk, and it needs to be in a compliant way. Now, the third element around it is your question around, is there an appetite for AI? Yes, there is, right? So I think as any other company, and once again, I've seen this in the past, right, where a company would say, well, SaaS or kind of, cloud is, that's not for us. We've all seen that every single industry has been transformed. Every single industry has been impacted. And that's the same case here. What actually is very, very powerful is the ability to serve our customers in these high-end industries, or kind of, in these assets, where the smallest impact can have huge consequences. but also huge consequences on the upside, right? So we will think around kind of, the bad things, what can happen, but let's focus on the positive things, right? And once again, coming back to the industry, what I'm enthusiastic around is the capability or the ability to automate, but also to digitize. McKinsey did a study last year, and it pointed out that only 0.2% of the total construction volume of all of these assets are being digitized. If you compare it to other industries, it's a fraction. So not only are we behind, as an industry, we're actually not going fast enough. So, AI is definitely front and center at every single customer. They're looking at it because of the impact. The discussions will be a little bit different, I presume, or kind of I know within some of industries, because there is a very different tolerance around in mistakes, around compliancy. So it has to be really well thought through. But the customer conversations are always around this. Now, let me give you 3 examples on how we look at AI. So you have the basic level, which is what we call AI search capabilities. Very, very important, right? You can do queries around different parts of the, around the asset, right? It could be 3D model, it could be, contract, but, because we built this integration many, many moons ago, we are able to serve this, right? So we've gotten rid of these single application businesses, making sure they're not point-to-point integrated, but deeply integrated. So we're able to serve and do these AI search capabilities, independent if it's in a 3D model, independent if it's in document structured, or however that works and that gives. And that's a huge power, right? And once again, I've seen that happening in kind of the RPA world, where all of a sudden processes could take an hour, could take now 90 seconds, and that's exactly what we've been able to deliver to our customers now. The second one is around what we call agents, and these agents are pre-built and pre-configured. And these agents are able to do things such as collision detection, but in combination of changes in design, or in combination of contracts, and it gives you that additional layer around kind of ability to have agents do a lot of this automation and work. And these are pre-configured agents, which we are able to deliver to our customers. They can kind of consume these agents, of course, all on token based and around construction volume, not user based anymore. And some of the use cases what we have there are incredibly powerful. When we showed it to our customers over the last couple of months, they were absolutely baffled and kind of surprised around the capabilities and around what that will give them. Again, our customer base is very, very receptive, but it has to be accurate. It's about compliancy, it's about risk, and it's about zero ability to make mistakes. Right? And we all know that in the agentic era, mistakes can be made. So we've put a lot of kind of effort in that. The third one is what we call it in Thinkproject IQ. And where I think we're going as an industry is no longer around kind of I need so many licenses, I know you need so many seats. You're going to go to outcome based. So what we now have is what we call Thinkproject IQ, and it's a team where it's being headed by somebody who comes out of a more consultative world, talks to the customers, understands what the problem is, right? Kind of understands what the problem is, then builds it into kind of a business case, works it out with solution architects, right, around kind of the infrastructure which is around it, which is Thinkproject, but it could be any other applications business where data could be sit or be held, and then you have actually agents, product agents who build basically the agent, bespoke agent, what we call Thinkproject IQ, and that's where it's going to go to, right? So it's outcome based, results, and this is where the industry and software companies are going. So it's going to be very different than giving 10 licenses. I need this, and for the industry, let me give you a use case. So a lot of our asset owners or customers, they have huge amount of assets, and they need to make sure that they're certified and compliant. This is a huge task which is happening now manually, right? So people are looking at it. Is it certified? Does it have the certification? And why is that important? Well, first of all, as I said, we're working in a high compliance regulated industry, right? So you need to make sure that the tunnel or the infrastructure which you're building is compliant, and it's to the standards which need to be adhered. These agents basically make sure that happens. the cost of not being compliant, let's say if there's a fire or anything else, insurance companies are going to ask, okay, can you prove to me that this has been done, right? So
It's a mess.
that's a huge complication. So that's the way we're looking at it. 3 levels. AI search capabilities across all of the applications, from contracts to CD in combination. The second one is agents, which are being pre-built, pre-configured. And then the third one is bespoke agents, agentic AI. And that's what we're launching, and that's what we have as capabilities now to our customers. And once again, this has put Thinkproject in a completely different level, right? And the team which we've built around us, not just the leadership team, but everybody in the company, like 50% of our code is now generated through AI. Every single department is using agentic and AI capabilities. We've been able to kind of accelerate our growth in our business, growing more than twice as the industry. And the reason is we've been able to do this because customers trust us, not for years, but for decades. But they're seeing the innovation which we're bringing now towards them in a very agentic era, so to say. So look, I'm enthusiastic. I'm very, very optimistic around where we are as a company today. It's clearly highlighted in our growth. It's clearly highlighted around kind of customers trusting us and giving us, their most important assets to manage and build and maintain. And I'm very proud of the fact that we are a European-based company, but we're ahead of the competition and ahead of competition in the US. So maybe just a kind of a little bit of proudness to be European. Innovation, and look, I've been part of Silicon Valley companies and I've learned a lot, and I think they're incredible on innovation. But you know what? Innovation doesn't always have to happen in Silicon Valley. It can happen right here in Europe. It can,
Exactly.
it can happen right in Munich or in Paris or Brussels or anywhere.
And one of the topic that is being brought up recently more and more is data sovereignty, and I think here Thinkproject will have a strong positioning. If correct me if I'm wrong, but being one of the strongest European CDE or data player in the construction and asset owner. How do you see this, and do you think this is a main blocker for as well for US players to come in, or can they play it out well? Because we know they have been struggling in the past few years. What are the main reasons there, and how hard is it for US companies to go into European market?
So let me answer that kind of in 2 ways. So the first one is, look, I always focus on what we're good at, right? And the way we're going to be able to serve our customers, which is public, private, and then because we serve the most sophisticated, complicated assets, right? Which are mission critical, right? I mean, we use airports every day. They're Thinkproject customers. We use roads every day. They're Thinkproject customers, right? When we tap on the water in the UK, or we turn on the electricity in Germany, they're all Thinkproject customers, and it's critical vital infrastructure which we're serving. So security and data and sovereignty is at the heart what we have to do and make sure is, again, we work in a highly regulated industry. Do we have an advantage? Yeah, we do, but I think that's not,
The only one.
we try and be the choice because of innovation,
Exactly.
because we're ahead, because we have embraced and entered the agentic era, which is very different than the application business, which I've been a part of for the last 2 decades. Now then, to your question around kind of how customers are looking at this. So yeah, more and more it becomes around kind of where does data sit, but also kind of who's serving us, what's the dependency on it. And once again, we're European born, but we've got a global reach. And once again, the customers are not looking for point solutions, right? They're not looking for the fanciest BIM, because if data is not connected, it doesn't matter. You can have a great 3D model, but if it doesn't have the right data inside of that model, it's useless, right? It doesn't make any sense. So what we're trying to do and what we build is making sure that all of this data is live and accurate constantly. Now then, to your question, I always kind of like to kind of compare us to one of the best ways of describing it is actually what HSBC has always done when they call themselves the global local bank, and that's exactly what we are. We're a global player at scale, but we are very much into the details on the local markets because that's the reality. And that's, I think, is, once again, we're in Europe, we have that uniqueness, right? There are different regulations in France, then there's Germany, then it's the UK, right? And that's, for instance, the way contracts are being built, right? In the UK, you've got, NEC, FIDIC, and all kinds of other standards. And in France, you have different. So we apply the local rules and we work with the local capabilities to make sure that the power of the contract platform, kind of the contract application or kind of the solution set is there, but adhering to the local laws and processes and guidance. So I would describe it as the global enterprise construction company, but with a local reach.
And just to clarify for everyone, Thinkproject can be used across the world. You have
Yes.
asset owners that are global, that have presence, they do projects everywhere. It's not specific to Germany or France or to any other country.
No, that's actually a great question. And I mean, we just won one of the largest constructions in Australia with contracts and in a combination with our CD capabilities and analytics. And the reason why we won it, right, was because we were able to provide all of these things in this one platform, and they saw, as well, the AI capabilities we're able to serve now to our customers. And that was the reason, why we got chosen over anybody else. And that same, CD or contract or that same combination is applicable and capable in any of these countries. And we've been able to kind of overcome some of these classic European challenges where, because we have, European, marketplace, which consists out of many, many countries, many, many regulations, to have a platform which is able to do this on a global basis, right? The same way as we do it in Australia and in New Zealand, but adhere to the local standards and the local capabilities. And that's that transformation together with the platform next generation, which is with AI capabilities, agentic, and the power of not a single application has led to us not growing at industry average, but to accelerate more than 2 times in that average. We're taking share, right? We're growing this business, and I'm very proud, the team which we have, being able to kind of lead this era of innovation. And I think we're all very proud at the company. We were leading in the past, right? We were the golden standard in contracts and all these things, and now we're the golden standard of the agentic era. So it's a great place to be.
Amazing, and congrats for the win and on the Australian side. Maybe just to understand because I know how the shift is happening, but is the underlying, let's say, CD or the underlying data ready for this? We saw has been a shift from a document-based CDE, let's say, to a data-driven or data-centric with BIM at its core and so on and so forth. Do you see another change happening? Do you think this is ready for AI deployment, or there should be something beyond, not necessarily coming from Thinkproject, but more from modeling the document, how you capture the data on site or in design and engineering?
Yeah, so once again, we started this journey quite a while ago, and with our amazing engineering team, and we have a dedicated AI team which has been working on agentic for a year plus, right? Just purely investing in that because, again, a lot of the team which came out of this kind of pre-agentic era saw what the power could do, so we were kind of getting ready for it. So is there fundamentally something which has to change? I think for us, we've done a lot of the heavy lifting, right? I think that's where what we knew this was going to happen. So we've done a lot of investments. At that point in time, didn't yield, as we would say, you're putting resources, you're betting, your resources, not only from a monetary perspective, but also from a capability and capacity perspective in something which we knew was around the corner. We didn't know exactly what was going to be happening, but we've made that ready. Right? We've made that transition. So we've crossed the chasm, which is, I think, once again, where a lot of enterprise software companies still have to cross it, and now have to kind of really speed up because it's no longer an option. Then to your question around the data. So something which we've actually built is what we call data hub, right? So which sits around everything around it. And once again, we don't believe that, we will not be able to serve everything in one, the reality is customers will use sometimes different solution sets in different parts that could have been there from a historic perspective, and that's all good, right? So some of it we just don't do, right? So, but we do believe that we need to be connected, and Data Hub gives that opportunity to connect all of these data points and serve them up in a way that makes sense for the customer, both from an analytics perspective, from an AI and agentic perspective in that side. Then to your question, how's the future going to look like? Well, I don't, it's always it's hard to predict exactly where it's going. But I do always believe that historic trends are a really good indication. So if we step back, where are we? Well, we are in an industrial revolution, right? And this is a story which, when I joined, in the industry and kind of technology and software technology, was just at the beginning, right? SaaS was it. So AI and agentic is another point. It's a very, very important point, right? But if you look at industrial revolutions, they don't happen in 5 years. They happen in decades, right? And this industrial revolution started, I would say, decades ago. So this is a point in time where something really significant happens, right? So it's a critical inflection point on that. And as I was saying, the paranoid survive. It's a famous kind of quote, but also book from Andy Grove at Intel, right? So where you see these strategic inflection points, and this strategic inflection point is not happening. It happened, right? Because it happened with agentic and kind of the precursor, what we call RPA, and now in the agentic era. So I think that what will change is exactly to what I'm saying, is that you're going to have these, what I call these Thinkproject IQ engagements, right? Which problem are you going to solve? Okay, can you solve my compliancy problem on my assets? That, I think, is going to be the question. It's not, okay, how many licensed users do I need? Because this is a part of my, my problem to do. It's, they're going to put it out there. And that's where the transition or the transformation for software companies are going to come in, where, yes, software is going to be a huge part of it in the agents and the different LLMs, which you're going to be using in order to create. But they're going to come to you and ask you to solve a problem. And they're going to pay you for solving that problem. Do my accounting. It's not like, can you give me accounting software? Solve my incompliancy. Now, is that going to happen tomorrow? No. And again, I think in the construction tech industry, it's going to take a little bit longer, because once again, these are long processes, right? High OpEx, high CapEx, zero tolerance of mistakes. Compliancy risk is all at the heart. So it will be a little bit slower than some of the other industries, because I think not only on risk appetite, but just on the fundamental things, as I said, right? So if we think, there's not water coming out of, the faucet, that's a huge problem. So you can't make mistakes. So it will be a little bit slower, but that's, I think, is the outcome where the industry is going to go. Can you solve my incompliancy? Can you solve my data? Can you solve my BIM?
Amazing. And how do you see the growth opportunities? Is it beyond AI, and what can AI do, and how can it reshape the customers' workflows and how they work? You see, obviously, construction is under digitalized, but happy to know where are the pocket of growth from that perspective from your side.
Yeah, so I think it's a huge what I call target-rich environment, so to say. So the growth is not only coming from assets which are being constructed and being built and managed now. If you look around, right, if you're in Paris or if you're in one of these large cities, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of assets which are not digitized, right? There might be a PDF, there might be, records, there might be something somewhere sitting in something. Let's say there is, all of the data is digitized, but they're all dispersed. So I think one of the other things which will start to happen is a massive digitalization of assets now, and that's going to be huge for the industry, right? You're going to have, and I think this is where innovation comes in. I mean, we're of course in the agentic software kind of business, but you will see, companies with, actual, equipment with, camera systems or kind of, measuring, capturing the data from inside. So I think there's going to be a huge amount of innovation, which I'm very, very excited around. So if you go to some of these, these like the Bouw Digitaal or some of these other events, you can see it happen. And I'm always kind of, curious because I'm born kind of raised in the cloud in software. But I always like to see kind of what's innovation going somewhere else. And you see robotics, you see, so this industry is going to go and digitize, in a big way. It's just going to take a little bit longer in some parts. And the other reason is very simple, is that you just don't have enough people. So automation is going to be part of it, even physically. So I think the opportunity is vast. And what I always say to my team is, if everything is important, nothing is important. So we focus, right? So we focus on certain kind of industries, and we focus on the asset owner together with some of the GCs. We focus on very specific markets. And then the other one is really driving and accelerating our ability to innovate. And this is something which you will see happening is, if you would have looked at this company 12 months ago, it is radically different. Right. So with the team, we've accelerated on innovation. We've accelerated on our products. We've embraced kind of the future because, once again, I've seen this movie before, every time. And in this industrial revolution, I'm sure there's going to be other things which are going to be happening. But this is a critical point in time for our industry.
And maybe last couple of questions on my side. Do you see that, because there will be a lot of AI players or AI native players that will come up in the market. Right now, most of them are small applications or small point solutions. And as you said, the market is going more towards a platform where AI at its core rather than just an application there. But do you see any risk coming from these players? Do you see any threat, or do you think Thinkproject is ready to fight in this market?
No, so again, paranoid survive, right? So if you stand still, you're going to be out. And the way I look at it is, you'll have three types of software companies. The first one is what I call the T-Rex, right? And it was almighty. It roamed the earth, and it was basically invincible. And then something happened, right? And there's single application businesses, and it's also very important for management teams to not be complacent. It will change. I've been in this industry long enough. I've worked with the industry leaders where I've seen that we've changed the industry. And you saw companies which were trying to fight it, and all we can go to museum and we see kind of the skeleton and say, what happens? Well, they didn't want to change, and they didn't evolve, and something dramatic kind of evolved. And this is kind of the second one is going to be the software companies which are going to have a lot of margin compression, because you'll have to work very differently, right? There's going to be competitors, and that's great. It's happening every time, right? Every time there's competition, and that's good for innovation, because that means that at the end of the day, customers are going to have choice. And when you have choice, innovation happens. There's pressure to kind of innovate, and then there's new things around in the market. But if you're trying to find it, and of course there's a lot of this application or kind of software business or solution business which is going to be there. It's just going to be very much margin compressed. And then you're going to have the third category, and the third category is around embracing the agentic era, right? And it's not around what kind of application am I going to do? It is around solve my problem. Give me, I'm going to call Thinkproject because I want to make sure that all of my assets are compliant to whatever standard or what needs to be done. So when you have 50 billion of assets, you don't have to worry around the fact of compliancy. The other one is around capturing data and so on. So we're constantly thinking around, and this comes back to myself. like, even though I'm the CEO, I don't know everything, but I am very much learning every single day. And if I don't know, I want to know how it works. And if I think I know it works, I'm going to try and make sure is that somebody challenges me. You have to be in this industry with a beginner's mind. If at one second you think you're going to be the dominant player and you are, you've got the holy grail of the solution, I think that's the day you're going to be in category 1 or 2. So we try and be paranoid. We try to be innovative. And we will make mistakes. And the other thing is really around taking the organization with you, and that's very, very hard. Change is not something which people like, right? They want to be in a comfort zone. They want to do it exactly the same way as they've done it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? What the life was simple and very, it was very easy to understand because that's the way it works. It's not going to be the same. So like with me, you have to be there with a beginner's mind, think around things differently. And, one of the things what we do as an executive team is what we call the crash test. Every single year, when we spend a full day of what we call crash testing, what can go wrong, right? What should we do? Where do we need to invest, right? Where is innovation happening? And these are the things which are constantly keeping us kind of fresh. And we'll constantly have to kind of veer. At the end of the day, customers are looking at us to deliver them the most advanced solutions in a compliant, risk-free, and a zero tolerance mistake way. And that's hard, but that's a challenge we need to earn. And that's what we do at Thinkproject every single day. And for us and me and the team is to make sure that everybody comes along that journey. It's not easy. Not everybody always believes in that journey, but that's the reality of the agentic era. I mean, this is not here as it's not a nice thing to have. It's a must thing, and it's exciting.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Renzo. Honestly, you answered my second question, so that's perfect. I don't want to take more of your time. It was a big pleasure to have you here, and hopefully we'll do it another point later on in the next year or so.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being here, and once again, I'm excited around the future, and I'm really excited around the industry, and proud to be, a European-based company, which we're able to kind of, stand up, with some of our US competitors, and it's great because that means that we're all innovating. At the end of the day, right? We're competing, but we're all innovating. We're moving the chains. We're embracing the agentic era. And once again, we live and breathe that every single day here at the company. So thank you very much for your time as well.
And best of luck on your new products there.
Thank you.